Hey everybody, this week's episode of the Rahdo Q&A is brought to you by Elf Creek Games, and hello everybody. I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means, folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can am. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. Okay, folks, we are back, and we're starting with Daniel, who opens with Luck in Co-ops Part 6. Which I thought we were done, Daniel. Wasn't like last time, the final chapter? Anyway, this is the time travel to go back to the original question, since after 5 months, we veered off the beaten path. Since I didn't mean to imply that dire abattoir leads to a certain loss, just that it leads to the possibility of a loss during an otherwise near-perfect playthrough. Okay, folks, I always have to remember, this might be the first time you've ever seen this show and you're wondering, what the heck is all this about? This is a ongoing conversation between me and Daniel about a particular card in Aeon's End called Dire Abattoir, which Daniel believes is unfairly punishing to players, and which I do not agree with him at all. I think it's just a fun and challenging card that you have to overcome, like many, many other cards. Anyway, though, with that context, let's continue with Daniel's point. Why do designers feel the need to insert cards like the one in Shadowrun Crossfire that you mentioned? Right, and so Daniel's referring to a different card that I said, oh, you want a bad card, Daniel? Let me show you a real bad card. And, I mean, it's one of the very, very few truly awful cards I've seen. All the examples Daniel had do not show, hold a candle to 1 hot minute from Shadowrun Crossfire as a game that is purely mathematically designed to be twice as powerful, damaging-wise to players, as anything else in the game. And it's obvious to see. It's literally written up that way, as opposed to Dire Abattoir, which basically says, oh, if you can't stop the effect of this, your character gets KO'd, which is not that big a deal in Aeon's End because you keep fighting. It doesn't end the game at all. Anyway, continuing with Daniel. I've seen such cards, cards that can wreck your game no matter how well you're doing, in lots of otherwise fairly balanced low-luck games. See, again, Daniel, we're never going to get to the end of this, buddy, because you said in an otherwise nearly perfect playthrough, the Dire Abattoir can cause you to lose. If that card by itself causes you to lose and there's nothing you can do about it, you did not play a nearly perfect game. I would go so far as to say you were not even doing very well. If you were in a state where, because one player went from, let's say, worst case scenario, full health to 0 health, which doesn't take them out of the game in any way, shape, or form. It just means that your protected city is going to take more damage in the future. It doesn't even take it immediately. If that one Aeon's End is designed for players to get knocked out over time. You're supposed to get knocked out. I'm kind of feeling, Daniel, that you think that you have failed if anybody ever gets KO'd in Aeon's End. When I would suggest that means if most of the time, Daniel, if you don't run across Dire Abattoir and none of your teammates fall down to 0 hit points at any point, you need to bump up to the next difficulty level. You and your group are ready for it, Daniel, because you are playing the game with training wheels on. The game is supposed to hit you hard enough that by the end you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I've said this a million times, like John McClane at the end of Die Hard, just barely pulling myself to the end because everybody except for one person has been KO'd and the city is on the brink of destruction, and then we do that last win. That's the experience you should be having. You're not having that experience if you make it all the way through and nobody got KO'd. You and I have a fundamentally different vision of what an exciting cooperative experience should be, quite frankly. Anyway, though, I'm continuing with your point. All right, so why include these? If it's tension, other cards do that. I remember several, oh my god, we're doomed cards in Aeon's End, but none of those were as frustrating as Dire Abattoirs. A quote, wow, I'm dead, and I was at full health, so exciting. Yeah. Again, you're not dead. You're not dead. you get to keep playing. None of your toys have been taken away. It just means in the future, the damage that would be dealt to you instead gets dealt to the city, Gravehold. And it just means you and your teammates have to change your tactics because you have to ensure that you, Daniel, take no more damage. That other people step in. That you don't equally divide the damage amongst everybody because you, through one card, have become a weak link in the team that everybody else has to supplement. And therefore, it enhances the opportunity for teamwork. That, to answer your question, is why it's there. To change the overall flow and tenor and experience that you would otherwise have if, oh, no, we just always make sure that everybody takes an equal amount of damage, everybody pays an equal amount of mana, and we always make sure that, if one of us dies, we might as well just quit playing right now. You're playing a different game than the game as designed. So, but anyway, and it's the game as designed. It's that design that these that these cards exist to create moments of challenge and difficulty for you to overcome. Anyway, though, these cards seem to bring only feelings of frustration, and I'm sorry you feel that way. But I mean, Daniel, I would agree 100%. If there was a card, if Dire Abattoir or any card like it literally said, pick one player. That player puts away their deck of cards, gets up and walks away from the table. Now, no matter what the circumstances are, that would be a horrific, terrible card. That is what you're saying Dire Abattoir is, except it's by definition not that. It's something else. And I appreciate you're frustrated, and so my answer to you is, dude, just keep it out of the deck. It's easy. It's not hard to do at all. But if you do insist on keeping in the deck, bear in mind, you shouldn't be frustrated. You just be, oh my gosh, I just lost 10 hit points. I went from 10 to 0. Oh my gosh. And the city only has 5 hit points. What are we going to do now? That's when you as a team pull together and overcome the seemingly impossible. And that's a truly heroic moment. Taken from a different perspective, looking at it as an opportunity to rise above adversity should instill within you a, wow, how are we going to do this? Okay, guys, let's get our crap together and do this thing. That's what it should do. Now, there's nothing, I mean, if instead it creates in you a feeling of, oh, this is garbage, I hate this game, dude, just remove the card from the game. There's 50 billion other cards. One card less isn't going to matter one way or the other. That would be my suggestion. But anyway, that's my best answer, as best I can, as a former game developer and designer myself, as to why a card like that would exist. And by the way, everything I just said is equally true for One Hot Minute. I don't like One Hot Minute. It does feel unfair, but you know what? Often, you know who else thought it was unfair? Luke Skywalker, when Darth Vader chopped his hand off. Luke thought that was pretty unfair. And did you say, I'm frustrated, I refuse to fight anymore? No. He found strength within himself to overcome and continue fighting. Dire Abattoir is your hand chopped off. Look at it that way, and maybe you will find it creates a more rich and compelling tapestry of an experience for you, Daniel. Maybe. And if not, just take it out of the box. Alrighty. Burn it on a funeral pyre. Get your revenge on it. Get some satisfaction out of it. Anyway, number 2 for Daniel. Related to question 1, I mentioned boss attack modifier cards in Marvel Champions that make one discard their allies. Daniel says, am I right in assuming that you find that card annoying, but don't find Dire Abattoir card annoying? If yes, why? No, I don't find that card annoying. I don't. I really don't. It's not a problem at all. I mean, I had to think long and hard for a card that I think maybe crosses the line. One Hot Minute does. And even the reality, One Hot Minute really crosses the line for me on an intellectual level. I have come across One Hot Minute in gameplay, and it in and of itself did not destroy me. And I was able to continue to go on and persevere, or at the very least, pull off an abort, which is the kind of like a half win, which I love, was one of the things I love about Shadowrun Crossfire. So no, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, Marvel Champions, by its very nature, is a game of attrition. The bad guy loses their allies all the time. I lose my allies all the time. The only thing that really bugs me about Marvel Champions is, Unlike Aeon's End, which will put something on the table and then give you time to respond to it. We'll create a problem for you to solve, and maybe you can't solve it, or maybe you'll say, you know what, we're going to live with that. Or you know what, okay, that thing's going to hit somebody. Let's make sure that we let that person get hit by a bunch of other stuff first, so it doesn't bother us so much when it eventually hits us. See, or you're just kind of creating opportunities. Marvel Champions doesn't do that. Marvel Champions just says draw a card, reveal it, and do whatever it says. And that's why one of the many reasons that Aeon's End is a superior title to Marvel Champions. But your allies in Marvel Champions are there as meat shields. They are there specifically to be set up and knocked out and come back over and over again. Never mind the fact that a card like that in Marvel Champions may very well be going up against a hero, I should say, who has no allies. You can make very strong. Some heroes don't do well with allies because they're loners, and then that card is meaningless, and you just discard it and draw the next one. So no, it doesn't bother me at all. In the same way, Dire Avatar doesn't bother me, because all it does is create a more interesting and compelling narrative. The thing I always loved about Marvel Champions more than anything else is that it created those really exciting, pivotal, dramatic comic book moments that I loved growing up. And that's a card that does that. If Falcon is taken out because there's an earthquake on the other side of town, and he has to go off and save them, and so instantly he has to go off and do it. To me, that's like, wow, what a really cool twist in the story that's being told by this game. I don't look at it as, wow, this game is unfair and I don't like it. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, whoa, that's an exciting twist. All right. Question 3. Games that you wouldn't play. Are war games like Advanced Squad Leader and Path of Glory good examples of games you wouldn't play, or at least the games that you would try probably quit halfway through? Very much so. It's funny, actually, Daniel, this is a follow-up to when I went through that list. ASL, I couldn't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but I was certain ASL, Advanced Squad Leader, was in the Board Game Geek Top 100. That was the specific game I was looking for to try to use as an example. And apparently it's not even the top 300, because then I go through like the first and the second and the third page, but I couldn't find anything until the second page. So yeah, honestly, boy, it would be a really weird circumstance that somebody could convince me to play those games, because I have active disinterest in the subject matter, the glorification of war and death and suffering, with nothing deeper and more meaningful to say other than, wow, war is really cool and exciting and fun, isn't it? When we shoot off big guns and kill lots of people and dismember them. I find the entire subject matter, I don't blame anybody who enjoys it. Hey, I'm a hypocrite. I love violent action movies, but to me, taking to the next step, and I've made violent first-person shooters, but I guess it's a scale thing. Taking it to the raw inhumanity meat grinder of modern warfare with big guns and all of that, and rejoicing when I have personally just taken out all your troops. And to me, I look at that, and that represents mothers and daughters and wives and brothers and uncles and aunts and friends who have lost their loved one. That's how I look at that moment. I often look at moments if after John McClane shoots a bunch of bad guys, if there's ever a moment where he's like, oh my God, I gotta catch my breath, or in any kind of action sequence, my brain always immediately goes to wow, Hans was a kid once. He was a sweet little adorable kid. I think it's the original Austin Powers movie made a joke about this, that Austin Powers just dispatched some nameless henchman, and then it cut to a scene of the call that the henchman's wife and kids gets at home to say, oh, your husband was killed by some weird toothed British secret agent, and how it destroyed her life. I don't think of that scene that often, but it's an indelible way I look at violence in any form of entertainment. I tend to look at the villains as what brought them to here. Why are they doing this? Are they unwitting dupes? Were they socially conditioned to believe this? How did they turn from a sweet, innocent child full of love and wonder into cannon fodder for John McClane? I tend to look through everything through that lens. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy the visceral thrills and the action, but yeah. So there's one thing when it's just on a low mano a mano scale, but then when you take it up to war level stuff, it's just too much for me. And then on top of that, they're so overburdened with ridiculously Byzantine rules to, as accurately as possible, represent every single facet of these horrific human tragedies that we are supposed to wallow in and enjoy. I just can't do it. Yeah, but you're right. Yes, those are perfect examples, and I was just shocked they weren't in the top 100. Question 4. Looking at the Board Game Geek Top 100 or 200, what are the best designed games, in your opinion, that you played that you didn't like or found they're not for you? That's a good question. Let's do that. Let's go back to the Board Game Geek. Let's all go to Board Game Geek. And let's see. Go to BGG. And where is it? Those are my shortcuts. No, it's browse. Browse all board games. Let's just start from the beginning. And let's see. You were specifically asking the best game that I've played that just doesn't work for me in Gen. So, actually, I'm not going to go here. Instead, I'm going to go to gone.rahdo.com, which is I'm not perfect. I don't always get every single game listed on here, but I try to make sure I make a note of why I get rid of every game I get rid of. So, I have got that. It is I need to default sort it by board game rank. And you know what? Brass Birmingham. Although, I mean, let's skip that one. Terraforming Mars is the 6th highest ranked game on Board Game Geek. And yeah, it's not for me. So it's probably Terraforming Mars then, right? Putting aside AI art and all that, which I know there's questions coming for that in a little bit. All that aside. And Dune Imperium, number 7. Okay. No. You're asking, what do I think is the best design? Do I think Terraforming Mars? So, okay, then just to narrow it down a little bit, let's just look at the BGG top 30 games, all right? Just to try and keep this a little bit under control. And of the BGG top 30 that I got rid of, because it's right here at gone.rahdo.com, easy to see, what do I think is the best design and why? Okay, so you've got Brass Birmingham. The reason I got rid of that is to make room on shelves, and also because there's been a few things. Carnegie is one, and now Cargo Empire is another, that's really making me fundamentally rethink my appreciation of route building games, or maybe my lack of appreciation. I'm this close to getting rid of Railways of the World as well, which I'll have to talk about some other time. Folks, by all means, ask me a question. Send it to questions@rahdo.com, and we'll talk about it next month, because that's not what we're talking about right now. Terraforming Mars, obviously, I got rid of it because of the... Terraforming Mars is definitely not the best. Putting aside the fact that I do not like smashing an asteroid into your stuff to destroy your things. I hate that. My bigger issue with Terraforming Mars has always been, as I say right here, that the two-player scaling is awful. Or I should say, there is a complete and total lack. Or did I say this? No, I didn't. Oh, I do. Unfortunately, the way too long for our taste. Yes. I think Terraforming Mars has a bad two-player implementation because they did no scaling at all and expect 2 players to do the work of 4 players. And I find that to be an actively bad decision, design-wise. So I couldn't give it to Terraforming Mars. Dune Imperium, I only played it a bit. I haven't played it as much as the other ones. So, it's hard to say. I don't remember there being anything, putting aside my distaste for the fact that, there's an area control, me killing your people, everything I just talked about I don't like from ASL, that's a not insignificant part of Dune Imperium, and I don't like it for that reason. I got rid of it for that reason. And it's a very good worker placement / deck builder. But you know what? Endless Winter is a better worker placement / dash worker builder. Anyway, so it can't be that. Gaia Project, now, this is interesting. I had practically 0 issues with Gaia Project. Gaia Project might win because I don't see any faults in it. And honestly, what I say here, it really shines, but we just prefer Clans of Caledonia because of small. That is the only. I was in a case where it has a bigger box than normal, but I won't hold that against it. I'm always trying to look for ways to shrink down my game collection to make it fit on these shelves. And Clans of Caledonia, I felt, did pretty much everything that I wanted out of Gaia Project, but in a smaller box, right? And a quicker play time too. That said, honestly, I think I prefer Gaia Project to Clans of Caledonia because as time has gone on, I have found myself less engaged by, commodity markets in games. I still like them just fine, but I don't love them. And Gaia Project doesn't have those, and Caledonia does. If I could go back in time, I probably should have gotten rid of Caledonia instead of Gaia Project. So I'm thinking, I'm leaning towards Gaia Project. Twilight Struggle, it's a brilliant design. I have played it. But you know what I wrote here many, many years ago, back in 2014, didn't enjoy the seesaw nature of the core game structure. The fact that it is fundamentally... It can feel a little just kind of rote and repetitious that, oh, well, I pulled, this region over to me. Now you've pulled it back to you. Now I'm pulling it back to me. Now I'm pulling it back to you. There's nothing bad about that, but I don't find it particularly great either, and that really is the crux of it. Twilight Struggle's true strength as a design is its multi-use cards and how they mean something radically different for me than they do for you. The command card system is brilliant, but the tug of war is kind of boring. So no. Seven Wonders Duel... I said one of the most heartbreaking games of 2015 because of the... See, that's the other thing, too. Seven Wonders Duel, there's levels of take-thatedness. And Seven Wonders Duel is kind of an example of the absolute worst, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to play this card that screws you by taking your lumber and giving it to me, right? And stealing it from you. I hate doing that. But at least I appreciate it, because you know what? I need that wood. I need that wood to build my own things. And, so, at least but in Seven Wonders Duel, no. It literally gets destroyed. It is literally removed. You don't get it, and I don't take it from you, so I don't get it either. That is the worst. That is stealing and then burning the stuff up in front of you. There's no reason for any of this take-thatedness anyway, because it flew in the face of the egalitarian spirit of the original Seven Wonders. But to actually go one step beyond, I would say, is example of bad design. So no, I can't give it Seven Wonders Duel. So far, Gaia Project still wins. Brass Lancashire, same issue, which again, somebody asked me about what I think about route building games. I'll talk about it next month. Although I'll probably end up talking about when I do my run-through for Cargo Empire too. Anyway though, Terra Mystica had terrible two-player. It was actively bad. It should not have been marketed as a two-player game, so it can't win it. Arkham Horror, the card game. Now that one, Gaia Project versus Arkham Horror, the card game. Root, I wouldn't give it to because as brilliant as Root is and as wonderful a gimmick it is, I have seen what Root does done so much better by Free Radicals. And I'm not because Free Radicals is another, like Root, a completely asymmetric game where each player is playing a completely different game with a central board that pulls us all together. I mean, I'm not saying Free Radicals is better than Root just because it's Care Bear friendly and players help each other rather than hurt each other. That's not what makes it better as an objective observation of design. Free Radicals does everything Root does, but to ensure that people can sit down at the table and get to playing as fast as possible, the asymmetric mini games that everybody's playing have been simplified and streamlined down to where all I have to do is give you this piece of paper, and all you have to do is just look at the first couple of paragraphs and you can be up and running. Root, I have to spend 15 minutes individually with each player around the table before we can start playing. And Free Radicals demonstrates a way to achieve the same end result in a much more economically viable fashion. So I couldn't give it to Root. And I said I'd go for just the top 30. So it still comes down to Arkham Horror, the card game, versus Gaia Project, which is the objectively superior design. Right. Because here's the thing. My really only problem with Arkham Horror card game was the danger cup. They replaced dice rolling with a cup that you have to pull out of, and but I appreciate that because hey, it's a modifiable die. I can put more bad stuff in or good stuff into it. More bad stuff come out. I can pay attention to what's in there, and probabilities change based on my input. So I appreciate all that. That said, if I were to criticize Arkham Horror, the card game, it would be that it still relies too much on draw from the cup, make your commitments and spend your resources before you draw. And that is implicitly weaker than draw. Make your decisions, draw, and then spend your resources to mitigate the draw. Play your re-rolls after. Thinking of it in terms of a die rolling game. If a game said, hey, you know what? Okay, I have to roll the die and I got to get 2 6s to win. That's ridiculous. No game's going to make you do that. But I have to get 2 hits, and hits mean 5s and 6s, right? So it's a long shot, but I have to roll 2 dice. I mean, the odds are against me, but it's possible. And so, again, a design could approach this 2 ways. Hey, I've got cards in my hand that I must play before I roll the die. And those cards say, add +1 to every die result you get, right? So I can play those. And those will really go a long way towards mitigating disasters. Or those exact same cards can be in the game, but it could say, after the die roll, pay the resource and play that card if you need to. I think it is, I would say, an objectively superior, viewed through the lens of giving players more agency and control and richer decisions to make, to have those implemented such that I could play the +1 after the roll instead of before. Because if I can only play before, I know there's a decent chance it will help me and save me. But there's an almost equally good chance that I will literally be throwing away resources for no reason and I shouldn't have done it. And it's 100% down to pure luck and probabilistic outcomes that I have no control over. And I find that to be a weaker crutch that developers lean on, saying, hey, you know what? Sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles, rather than doing the work to balance everything so it can say, hey, after the roll, I can exert myself and push harder than I thought I ever could, as opposed to, I'll push harder than I ever thought I could before I roll the die. And then it turns out I didn't need to do it. Or I did it and it still failed. There's nothing brave or exciting or heroic. There's nothing out of a, the hero's journey, transported into gameplay mechanisms to go that way. It's entirely wrong-headed in terms of storytelling. That's why it's weaker, and that's why Gaia Project answers your question, Daniel. I hope. That was very long-winded, but it was fun. I enjoy talking about design philosophy, much more so than most of the things I talk about on this. So thank you for the question, Daniel. But anyway, you're not done. Question 5, the Agricola feeding shackles. Is it the theme? Right, so this was me saying last time that folks like Tom Vassell get it wrong when they are upset and frustrated by the fact that Agricola will penalize you if you do not pay your workers. You'll lose 5 points for every year that you do not feed your workers, right? You'll lose 5 points. And that can add up. I mean, because a good score in Agricola is like in the mid-50s. So 5 points for not feeding, it's debilitatingly crushing. And my answer was always, if you're frustrated by that, just don't look at it that way. Instead, look at it that, hey, you know what? Every time I feed, that's me scoring 5 points. Because mathematically, it's the exact same thing. Me not getting -5 is the exact same thing as me gaining 5. So just flip the script and say, yes, I overcame. But anyway. So your counter, I assume you're responding to my observation about how you can flip the script on that and not be frustrated, but instead look at it as an exciting thing that enhances your experience. But anyway, so you reply, is it the theme that doesn't let us reverse the thought from I lost 5 points to I won 5 points? For a reverse example, in Ora Labora, the settlement phase technically is exactly the same as the feeding phase in Agricola, but you get points instead of losing them. So you feel like you accomplished something and not like you're being punished. Yeah, Daniel, that's the point. And there's nothing in the theme that doesn't allow for this. Here's the deal. Imagine that in Agricola, the family of subsistence-level medieval-era German farmers that you are tasked with advising, because that's really what you're doing. You're not anybody in the game. You're just a family friend helping them make decisions. Let's go under the assumption that this family, long before you came along, they made it into their 20s. They must have known what they were doing, right? Because they did not die. They made it to adult status. So they know how to feed themselves. They know how not to starve. Nothing in the Agricola setting says anything about, plague is ravaging the land and your family is going to die if you can't find food for them. It never says that. And clearly, the fact that they are adult subsistence level medieval era farmers means they have successfully made it this far. Maybe they're not thriving, but they were already surviving before you ever got there. That's the reality of what the situation in Agricola is. And so, furthermore, all you have to do is just pretend, yeah, you know what? If I never came along, they're not going to starve to death. They're somehow going to make enough food to continue to live. What I'm trying to do is ensure, through my advice and my sage counsel as their family friend, telling them you should really train in this agricultural practice, and you should really, whatever. You should really build this thing over here. As that's who I am in the game. I'm just a family friend. I come along, and if my advice is good enough, they're doing so well. They've got so much excess food that at the end of every year, they go from surviving, which is what they did before I came along, to thriving. They actually maybe have a little abdominal fat. They actually have enough food to celebrate and take a day off. And therefore, thematically, you might as well pretend that every time I give them food at the end of the year, it's like I got 5 points. And just, boom, make a note that I got 5 points. Just, every time, every time you do that, take one of the food tokens that you used to feed your family member and put it in a little bonus pile. And at the end of the game, count all of the food tokens you put in there and multiply them by 5 and give yourself that many points. Yes, your score won't mean anything compared to other people on Board Game Geek because you're turning negatives into positives. But thematically, that is exactly what's going on. And as you say, that's what they do in Ora et Labora. I don't remember if that's true, but I believe you. And honestly, Tom could easily do that. And it would change nothing in terms of game balance. And then he would say, yeah, look at all these times I fed my family. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom, 45 points. Whatever. It's not that many points. It's 3 points, isn't it? It's 3 points per, I think. Anyway, so, no, there's nothing in the theme. It is just willful disregard of the reality of the situation the game presents to you. It's just, saying, oh, I know this is what the theme is, but I'm going to interpret it the way I want to interpret it because that has the added bonus of make me frustrated because it gives me something to complain about. I don't know. That's digging into human psychology on people are always wanting to look for a reason to complain type territory, and I think that goes beyond the purview of your question. But if not, I know you'll be back next month, Daniel. Okay, let's move on from Daniel to Danilo. Danny says, first of all, let me say I love the show. Even though our tastes don't always match, I find your insights fascinating. On the subject of Euro games and their complexity, my 5 favorite games are Indonesia, Age of Steam, Road and Boats, Food Chain Magnate, and Spirit Island. It's a great list. I clearly tend to enjoy a game more when said game is very crunchy without the need for a lot of rules. Sure, I love Tricarion and Lisboa, but they're a bit less. Yeah, it's funny. I thought what are you talking about? I mean, Spirit Island has a lot of rules. Age of Steam doesn't. I've never played Roads and Boats. I've read the rulebook for Roads and Boats, but I never actually played it because I realized I'd hate it just reading it. But okay, I will grant you, yes, compared to Tricarion or a Vita Lasarda game, the rules overhead of those games is significantly less. 100% agreed. While still being deep and rich and crunchy experiences. So that brings me to my question. I feel like few rules, very deep, let's call them streamlined, even if I don't particularly like the term, games are rare. And they have been even more rare in recent years. I think it's true across all weight brackets in terms of weight. Hansa Teutonic is a 3.1. Beyond the Sun is a 3.12. Hansa Teutonic to me is obviously more streamlined. I agree. Indonesia is a 3.99 and Gollum is a 3.99. The same goes here. Sure. Road and Boats is a 4.19 and Tricarion is a 4.25. Guess which one is more streamlined? Sure. So, do you think my feelings about the rarity of these clean designs are grounded in reality? And if so, why? It is much more difficult to design a game with depth and crunchiness, but with fewer rules. It's interesting, Danny. First of all, in case you've never seen it, many years ago, before I even started, so this is well over a decade ago, before I started Rahdo Runs Through, let me see if I can find it. I made a geek list on Board Game Geek when I was just starting out and I was trying to learn things for myself. Let's come back to it and go to Board Game Geek, Rahdo, Depth, Complexity, Geek List. See if I can find it that way. Depth versus complexity. There it is. My Google skills are strong today. I made this back in 2012, before I started filming Rahdo Runs Through. Actually, it looks like maybe just about a month before I started, so maybe right around the time I started. And this was a thread where I was trying to quantify exactly what you're talking about. A spectrum of high complexity versus two competing XYs. There's the complexity of the game and the depth of the game, and how they are not implicitly linked together. Like Go, one of the deepest games humanity has ever created, and also one of the simplest rule sets. So that is like the ultimate example of an incredibly deep, rich game that you could be learning how to play for the rest of your life and studying. And yet it has half a page worth of rules, as opposed to a Vita Lasarda game on the far opposite side. That the two are not intertwined. And I just asked people to talk about it, and I gave some suggestions, and it looks like, and I believe other people did. And I talked about Reiner Knizia as an avatar for, high depth, low complexity and stuff like that. And of course, this is a very old list. When was the last time anybody put anything on this list? I don't even remember why I made the list. Oh, it looks like they were doing more Go-ish type stuff, and not since 2016 was the last time somebody added. Thank you, Ari and Corey, for revisiting. Oh, no. Corey popped up into it in 2021. I totally missed that. I will give them a thumb for visiting and giving some ideas. That's great. So anyway, to your question, why do I believe, or do I agree, and if so, why is the industry skewing towards complexity rather than depth? First of all, I don't know if that's true. But if it is, I will certainly say it is because, to answer you put it yourself. Make no mistake, it is harder to make a truly great deep game to enhance the depth of a simple game than it is to enhance the complexity of a simple game. And here's the deal. I do not use complexity as a pejorative at all. I think a game, the more complex it gets, provided it is compelling enough to not turn you away due to the complexity, I think that provides a wonderful experience, because human beings enjoy nothing more in life than getting the opportunity to do things that they're good at, to do something that they have mastered. And a game that is very complex with a lot of levers to pull and, plates to spin and so many different things. It's so complex. There's so many interconnected things and whatnot. And it's like, it's like a 20-page rule book and there's so much, and how am I supposed to keep track of all of it? The thing is, once you do get mastery over this complex Byzantine beast, it feels awesome to ride that beast into battle. Rather than a beast that you're like, oh yeah, I was able to learn how to ride this beast of in a half an hour. And there is, because we like to do things we're good at. What am I looking for? I'm looking for advanced search. Because what I want to do is, and here's the problem, Board Game Geek, and the denizens of Board Game Geek, by and large, equate depth and complexity as the same thing when they're not. And it is too bad, because a game will, an incredibly deep game will not be listed as heavy. Actually, I'm curious, what is the weight rating of Go on this side? But anyway, what I want to do is I want to just go for 2020 to 2023, just for the last 3 years. And I want to look at the weight range and say, okay, only tell me about 4s and aboves. But, games that at least 20 people have even commented on. And take out the expansions, because I don't care about that right now, and I want fewer things to look at. And show me this. What I'm going to look at here, Danny, is, do I think any of these games actually skew your way, or is the overwhelming majority? And right off the bat, I'm going to say the overwhelming majority is... But see, that's the thing. I don't know if this is correct, because I don't think the majority of, this is all just user data. People would look at a game that's, clean and simple and say, oh, well, it's not complex, so it's not heavy, because there aren't as many rules. Yeah. And actually, the reality is most of these games are so heavy, I don't play them when it boils right down to it. So, yeah. See, here's the thing. Depth is much harder to define than complexity, right? Complexity is just, hey, the more rules I have to remember, the more complex it is, period. The more rules and rules exceptions there are, the more complex it is. What does it mean to be more deep? I think that means is the level of thought I have to put into a decision and how it best affects my outcomes towards a win. The greater my thought the more I have to think on it, the deeper the game is, right? And there's two things that can make me have to think more. Right, there's 50 billion rules I have to think about that I have to navigate to make this decision. But if you strip all that away, you can still have a great game that makes you think long and hard. I mean, I think it's probably going to be the case that at the end of the day, it is simply an easier design task to up complexity than it is depth. Because complexity will give you a faux depth that can be satisfying in its own way, but requires an extra level of commitment that I totally understand why you wouldn't want to give it. But I mean, I'm just trying to think of, okay, let me look at a different list. Let me just look at my top games from the last few years. If the games I've identified as the best games of the year, if they have the level of elegance you're talking about, and right out of the bat, I would say Earth is a very elegant game. Very much so. Earth, if you haven't played it, Danny, you should try it. And it's probably going to be my number one game of the year when it boils right down to it. Evenfall is another one. Danny, try it. You're going to love it. Let's see. Rebuilding Seattle, Barcelona. Most of these are midi-weight in both terms of complexity and depth, which I guess is kind of where I tend to live. Nemalia is surprisingly deep because of the way it's very simply and elegantly institutes its objective system, which is not a complex beast at all. It's funny, Forbidden Jungle, the latest co-op Forbidden game from Matt Leacock. It was weird to see the Dice Tower the other day complaining about how, man, you could just be going along, trucking along, and just lose out of the blue, and there's no way you could predict it. And I'm like, you're not paying attention to the game then, because there is a lot of depth into the thought process. I mean, and I'll take the entire Forbidden series, other than the first one, Forbidden Island, Forbidden Sky, Forbidden Desert, and Forbidden Jungle. They seem incredibly simple, and they seem like they're just entirely driven by good or bad events, and you just hope for the best and you go along for the ride, when in fact, no. They're deep games because success in those games is all about long-term planning and probabilistic judgment, judging what is the probability that X, Y, or Z is going to happen and making plans that achieve what you want while avoiding pitfalls that you may or may not run into. And there's hidden depth there. So I think they exist. And honestly, a heavier game, I probably tend to fall in the same line as you, Danny. But I would say you're probably right. They are not as common. And did they used to be more common? Yes. Because prior to Vita Lasarda, and it really is, I mean, there were others making ridiculous, I mean, heck, the original Arkham Horror is just a ridiculously bloated over-the-top mess of needless complexity, right? But those are the exceptions to the rules. I really do believe Vita Lasarda is one of the most influential designers of the modern age because he made it cool to throw in more depth and complexity. More depth or more complexity that begot more depth. To fulfill his mandate of making sure everything is schematically accounted for, and you don't have. When you say streamlined, it's not a bad term because creating that depth in the absence of complexity means streamlining away all the complexity of life. Stripping away everything we do in life triggers cause and effect chains. And a complex game effectively models more of those cause and effect chains. A simple, elegant game says, you know what? Let's just leave most of those out and just get things down to the center. And that's what Reiner Knizia does. And but Vita Lasarda showed that no, you don't have to do it. There's definitely an audience for this for the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's hard to say. I am not a board game designer. I'm a video game designer. But my gut feeling is, you're right. At the end of the day, we see, there's two reasons we see a greater focus. Now, I mean, that's not to say there aren't wonderful deep games that come out every year. Furnace is a phenomenal one. Furnace is so freaking good. Furnace is like the epitome of incredible rich depth. And so is Azul, for that matter, without complexity. But those are harder to do, I think. It is harder to nail that. And it is easier to recreate all the complexity of a real simulation. And you'll be rewarded for it too, because Trickerion has made their entire modus operandi based on that. And so is Vita Lasarda. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean that people really enjoy that because they enjoy mastering something and doing then something that they have mastered. All right, death does not allow for mastery. I'm sure all the Go masters of the world will say, yeah, I'm still learning every day. Every time I play another game of Go, I learn something new. And that's satisfying in a different way, but it's not as satisfying as, yeah, I've tamed this beast and it is mine and now I will make it sing, you know? Alrighty. Darren says, I've argued on BGG about this and I wonder what your thoughts are. I say, Gloomhaven should not say 1 to 4 players on the box because to play solo, you have to control you have to play a 2-player game. Using that logic, all cooperative games are solo, minus anything with hidden information. Yes, you can play it by yourself, but it wasn't designed for that. Others say that if you can play it by yourself, then it's a solo game. I use Pandemic as an example of how games should be labeled. They say 2 to X, with the exception of the 1 or 2 that have a solo variant. You can play them all by yourself, and I do, but only that 1 or 2 are designed to be played by yourself. The other argument I've heard is that Gloomhaven's a dungeon crawler, and dungeon crawlers all have two-handed solo. I don't understand why dungeon crawlers are different, and so can't explain that one properly. Thoughts? I agree with you 100%, Darren. It is ridiculous. I almost agreed with you, but I'm going to stop. But in general, I agree with you. I think it is usually absurd to say that a cooperative game is a solo game because, yeah, you know what? You can just take on the role of 2 players. That's not a solo experience. It is technically. And, so they're putting it on there as a technicality. And I'm not going to lose any sleep over it because at the end of the day, there are some games that are designed from the ground up to be where, no, I am a general and it is my job to control multiple people. And so, yeah, if every single cooperative game in the world said they, with the exception of ones with hidden information, as you point out, say that they were 1 to X on the box, I personally wouldn't have a problem with it. I would disagree, but to me, it's kind of the same way I disagree every time somebody says, oh, I really love that game mechanic. And I just can't stop but think it's not some person in greasy overalls who's underneath the game box with a spanner tightening and loosening nuts and bolts. There's no such thing as a game mechanic. It's a mechanism. And yes, mechanics is a proper English plural of mechanism and is synonymous. But anyway, I know all that's BS, and I've let it go long ago. I've stopped correcting people, and I kind of feel the same way about this. Yes, to be proper, Pandemic is not a solo game. But if Z-Man or Asmodee or whoever, was responsible for these decisions wanted to put 1 to 4 player on the box, I'd be like, yeah, I guess. You can totally play it that way. That's fine. Now, it's interesting. You mentioned Gloomhaven specifically. Gloomhaven does get a pass. Because while it's not in the box, Isaac Childress did ultimately release, I forget, it's something like 16 different solo missions, right? I think it's 1 solo mission for every single character in the game. And those are designed to be played only playing as 1 character. And I've played a couple of them. And they're freaking awesome. And I wish he would make more. I'm sure there's plenty of end users who do it all the time. And I think they're kind of missing a trick. Of course, that is now what the Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs is. It's designed to be solo from the get-go. So I agree that you're right in the same way I would agree that you were right if you were wanting to rail about, semantics. But it doesn't really matter because, strictly speaking, technically speaking, I can get out a copy of Gloomhaven and I can play it from start to finish, controlling 2 characters by myself, and I can win, I can lose, I can have a wonderful time, and so I'm fine with it saying 1 to 4. And, so what if they put 2 to 4? And it means there are players out there who would have loved it, but never picked the game up because it didn't let them know that they would love it. Because you can't assume that everybody implicitly, intuitively understands that, if the game says it's cooperative, I can play it by myself. Heck, I'm coming around on this as I talk. I'm talking myself into saying all co-op should say 1 to X on the box instead of 2 to X on the box, with the exception of hidden information like, Hanabi or what have you. So I'm not really that bothered. Basically, I'm not bothered. Do what you want to do. I wouldn't say it's a lie. It's technically the truth. And you know what? Maybe it's for the best. Because I don't know that it's actively misleading, because at the end of the day, you can actually do it. It's interesting. I came into this thinking I 100% agreed with you, and it's kind of bugged me in the past. Because personally, I find it to be a weak sauce way to make a true solo experience. I think there is a difference between a truly solo game and what a cooperative where you're just playing multi-handed provides. And I think they should do the work. And it drives me nuts when a game wins Solo of the Year because they threw in an Automa mode instead of designing it up from the ground up to be a solo experience. And those should be the games that win true Solo of the Year. But it's all semantics at the end of the day, and there's no point in having nobody wins a semantic argument ever. So I guess that's where I come down on it. Anyway, though, Florent says, like you, I dislike direct conflict in board games. I especially dislike the type of conflict where the optimal play is to take away lots of points from another player, either by destroying something or blocking them from a critical action. However, excuse me, I somehow find quite a bit of enjoyment in two-player abstract games like chess, where one is directly fighting the other player. For some reason, the thought of unleashing a brilliant tactic to remove my opponent's piece thrills me instead of saddens me. Do you feel the same way? Though abstract games are near the bottom of my preferred game genre, I do enjoy and select quite a few, and I'm even more in the process of designing one. I'm in the process of designing one. Which one's your favorite, if you have one? Righty, okay, that is very interesting. I think I know why. Now, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself, but I think this addresses some fundamental human drive. Generally speaking, a in-your-face abstract dueling game like chess or Go or what's that really awesome one from Arcane Wonders? I tend not to. These tend not to be my kind of things. But dueling games that are abstract. The thing is, there's two ways a game can put aggression between players in the game. And it has to do with, what else am I doing in the game besides fighting you, right? In chess, there is nothing I'm doing in the game besides fighting you. Every single aspect, every single element of the game exists solely for one purpose, for me to fight you. As opposed to, say, Seven Wonders Duel, where every once in a while I get the opportunity to steal money from you and then throw it in the ocean. Now, in Seven Wonders Duel, almost nothing in the game is there for me to fight you. The Seven Wonders Duel is a relatively thematic game about me trying to build and create stuff. And then, hey, every once in a while, that's what I major in. And I can minor in, every once in a while, stealing your stuff and then setting it on fire in front of you, right? And I think that's terrible because it's unwelcome. It's contrary to the entire purpose of the game. The purpose of chess, of every single element of chess, is for me to knock your pieces off the board. The purpose of Seven Wonders Duel is for me to build something. And if I can take and knock your pieces off the board, I'm flying in the face of the heart of the game. I've talked about this in the past on the podcast and in other places. If you break a game down into one thing, I often like to think of, if I have to summarize a board game in one word, it's going to be a verb. It's going to be the verb that describes what am I doing. And is the verb I'm doing kill? That's the verb of chess. It's kill. I have my things kill your things. I guess there's a second one. There's trap, right? Because at the end of the day, but really, the only reason you're trying to do it is to ultimately kill the queen because she's trapped and she can't do anything. So you're trapped her, but really only within the greater confines of killing. That is the verb, and there's no other verb to that game at all, really. The verb that I like most in games is create, or build, or explore, or discover, or those kinds of things. And if a game is that, to then also throw in, and by the way, while you're discovering, or while you're building, or while you're creating, all these positive, uplifting things, hey, let's throw in a little bit of kill, too. It's just out of place, and it's discordant with the rest of the experience. And for my tastes, it shouldn't be there. And it's why I don't like it. And I suspect it's why you don't like it either. And I think the reason a lot of people do like it is because, well, hey, they just grew up their whole lives thinking, well, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. I played a lot of Warcraft, the old real-time strategy computer game. I spent all my time building up my city. And, the thing is, Warcraft is an implicitly fun and satisfying real-time strategy game to just make a wonderful little enclosed community of things that generate resources that help others so that we can grow and thrive and survive. And I'm sure there's probably games out there that, well, hey, yeah, that's all you do and just have a great time. But that's what SimCity is. SimCity is superior because SimCity does not throw in, oh, and hey, by the way, this is really what the game is all about. But then on top of that, let's just throw in a little bit of kill too. Don't get me wrong. I played I don't know how many hours of Warcraft, but I never really enjoyed it playing it head to head. It was an early game you could play multiplayer, and it was all about, hey, I'm just trying to build up as fast and as efficiently as I can so I can send my troops over and burn your stuff to the ground. And that was like, oh, well, I guess that's what I'm here to do, but I was really having a lot more fun doing the other thing. Can we just do the other thing instead? Yeah, so I think that's what it is. I think that's why you respond this way, and you don't respond that way in an abstract game. And the reality is, you might find yourself not responding that. The one I can think of that really, to this day, surprised me. There's a couple of them. Games that were very, very in your face and players attacking each other and destroying each other's troops and all that were Theseus Dark Orbit and Atlas, I want to say. Atlas was a game where you spent the first half of the game designing troops for tactical skirmish combat on a board. And then the second half of the game is attacking other players' custom stuff. And the thing is, it never really bothered me to be fighting Jen in that game because I was fulfilling the purpose of the game. If I did not create interesting units to test her units, what was the point of everything she did? Everything funneled towards that one verb. And that was an interesting combination of create and then kill, or create and destroy. Destroy is probably a nicer word than kill, right? Anyway. So I think it can work, and I think when you look at abstracts, everything just gets so pure and stripped down and taking away all the ancillary stuff and getting closer to that one verb. And when you have a game that doesn't have discordant verbs trying to occupy the same, simulation, it's inherently going to be better. Just like music is going to be better if all of the musicians are playing sympathetically with each other instead of playing discordant notes. Bad music is when you throw in bad notes that just don't fit with everything else. And to me, mixing verbs, it can be done well, but it's hard to do. And abstract games just strip away all the extra notes, I think. Just making it up as I go along, though. Anyway, continuing on. Number 2. My genuine openness, or your genuine openness when sharing your financial details of the Rahdo channel is very courageous. If you're comfortable with another financial question, I would like to ask whether you receive any measurable revenue from viewers with YouTube Premium subscriptions. I've been a premium user for a while and have always been curious whether the premium model has been beneficial to YouTubers or not. Thank you again for all your clever insight into our hobby and also the willingness to address important topics outside board gaming. Right, cool. I don't know. I too am a YouTube Premium user. It's the best, whatever it is, $12 a month. Actually, no, we have the family thing because me and Jen use it. A couple of people in the Rahdo Runs-Through Network, I think Ruel uses it, and my niece and nephew use it. So I think, what is it, $18 a month, and you get like a family pack of 6, right? So I've spread them all out. And it's the best $18 a month I spend by far. But I don't really know. But let's find out. Let's find out together, shall we? Let's go back to the browser and let's pull back the curtain behind the scenes of Rahdo Runs Through. Alrighty. Let's see. Actually, I need to look at public videos. Show me public videos. Let's see. This is the podcast. Let's do a Q&A, right? Where's my most recent Q&A? Alrighty. Q&A number 9, which is just an excerpt from episode 99 of the podcast. Okay, I need to look at analytics. Alrighty. This video has gotten 2,418 views since it was published. Oh, and I lost 2 subscribers. But I made $23. Okay. Righty, here's what we're going to do. I am going to make notes. New tab. Alrighty, so 2418 total, right? And that made $23.94. $24 out of 2,400 views. But now I'm going to go into advanced mode. And somewhere in here, gender, age, cities, geography, subscription status? What is it? It must be subscription status, right? Or is it subscription status? No, because that's whether you're subscribed or not, right? That's subscription source. Member levels? Membership type? No, that's if you're actually a member or not. I don't know. But tell you what, let's see. I think, I can add one, can't I? Right, there we go. So if I click here and I look at all the other things I can add, I want premium. There it is, YouTube Premium. There we go. So YouTube Premium made me $2.40. So I need to make a note of that. Alrighty. $2.40 is how much I made. So of the $24, $2.50 were from premium users. But now I need to know how many premium users actually watched. Is there a way to know that? YouTube Premium views right there. Boom. Okay. 511. There we go. We've got all the info we need, buddy. Now I just need to do some math. Okay, bringing up a calculator. This is fun. Folks, you can do this math at home. So 2418 minus 511 equals really... okay, right. So 1,907 viewers got me 23.94 minus 2.40 got me 21.54. Okay, so now 21.54 divided by 1,907 users means each one of those users got me 1 cent, 1 penny. Each one of the views of this, for people who are watching the ads, made me 1 penny. Okay, now let's do the same math. $2.40 I made from the premium users, of which there were 511. Whoa! Wow, each of them made me 0.00469666. Each of them made me a half a penny. Well, there you go then. Those are the numbers. All right. I honestly, did I do that wrong? Did I get that wrong? I don't think so. I think, yeah. I only make half as much money. I make twice as much off of somebody, a non-premium person who actually watches the ads. That is interesting. I wonder, though, there is no way that all 1,907 of those viewers who say they're watching ads, that a lot of them don't have ad blockers turned on. But all that would mean is, if I divide by an even smaller number, the number would get even better. Wow. Well, there you go. That's just one data point. And I don't know, maybe my channel is weird. But yes, I make half a cent off of a premium viewer. I make a penny off of a viewer. It looks like based on that one video. So there you go. That was genuinely surprising to me. I did not expect that. Okay, next up, George says, "Hi, Rahdo. What are your best methods for learning games? Do you usually just read through the rulebook and you can get it within one read, i.e. photographic memory?" Oh no, I guarantee that's not the case. Or do you look at other videos or a little bit of everything? What type of games do you find easier to understand? Does quantity necessarily equal quality? I know this is different for everyone. That seems like a different question there. What? Does quantity equal quality? I don't understand how that works. Do you mean quality of the rules? Quantity of the number of games I've played? I'm not sure. But anyway, continuing on. I know this is different for everyone, but you have so much experience with learning so many games that I'm curious what's worked best for you. Have there been games in the past where you simply refused to play because the rulebook was terrible? I personally learned by doing and mimicking first, then skim through the rulebook. Mostly Euro games just click with me. RPG games, I've given up. I sometimes feel like adding in a couple more pages will increase the quality of some of the games and reduce the frustration having to check all of BGG all the time. Arc Nova is maybe an exception. Okay, so quantity versus quality. You're talking about the quantity of the rules. And I see Jen staring at me from the other room. Yes, honey pie. I'm going to pause for a second because Jen needs something. Whew, that was a heavy topic that we just dealt with. but it's going along well. So that made me completely forget what was going on. I have to admit, I'm still just kind of thinking about the fact that premium only gives me, I always thought it was more, but those are the numbers. Anyway, though. Right. Okay, long story short, George. It was George, right? Yes, George. Here's my process. It all comes, first of all, get the rules. First thing, skip to whatever page I have to get to and read the bit that explains to me thematically who I am and where I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing. That is by far the most important thing. Read it off the back of the rulebook if you have to. Just try to get, it doesn't matter in some games, but in most of the games that Jen and I play, it helps to understand who I am, where I am, what I'm trying to do. Because that gives me a scaffolding in my brain that I can hang everything on as I read. Oh, right, because I'm actually trying to stave off floodwaters, it makes sense that I'm trying to collect this particular resource. And why these resources can be converted into resources, because at the end of the day, it's all about stopping flooding, or whatever. So, first thing I need to know is that. Second thing I need to do, and it's amazing to me, I say skip to the part in the rulebooks that I have to do this all the time. I read a rulebook the other day where the setup was not until page frickin' 15. 14 pages of listing what every single game mechanism is, and only halfway through the rulebook did they say, right, how do I set up the board? What cards are there? The important thing for me is once I've got a scaffolding of who am I, what am I doing, then I start building on that scaffolding by setting the game up. Tell me, how many what are the names of all these cards? Because again, I'm always ABT, always be ABTT, always be thinking thematically. That's my jam, and it's how I teach games. It's how I run through games. Even when games don't have a theme, I impose a theme on them. Go back and watch my run-through of Azul, where I did the work the developer should have done, explaining what is the central thing where all the pieces that are ignored go? How is that thematically justified? And I justify all of it, because it makes for a better game, because people respond to stories. Anyway, though, so read the setup and set it up. The hardest thing in the world for me to do is sometimes I'm in a situation where I can't set up the game ahead of time, but I've still got to, it's like when I know I got to play a game with Jen when we get home and we're on a 2-hour drive and I'm just trying to read the rules on my laptop, but I can't set it up. And so I'm not populating my scaffolding in my brain correctly, and everything's on shaky foundations and everything's wobbly. And I haven't built sturdily. Know who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm there. Know what are the pieces I have with which to do that thing. Oh, these cards are flippity flops, and these resources are Scooby Doops, and whatever they are. Knowing where they are, human beings are we are tactile creatures. We connect with things by touching them, by feeling them. And it's one thing to say, oh, I'll just read a list of what all the resources in the game are, but it's another thing to punch them out, put them in a pile, put them over there, see what they look like, and make a real physical connection with them. In the absence of a physical connection with something, I can never truly use that as a strong scaffolding to build on, right? Without that real world. If a thing is virtual, yes, I can still do it, but it's never going to be as structurally sound. Then start reading the rules. And here's again where rulebooks so often just blow it, because even if they put here's the order of a rulebook: thematic setting, setup, turn structure. That's job number 3. Tell me the turn structure of this game. Don't then, as so many rules do, waste page after page after page of various and abstract, still to me, very abstract concepts of, how things convert into other things and how events trigger based on different stimuli and what. I don't care about any of that. I know who I am, I know where I am, I know what I've got to play with. Now tell me, from turn to turn, what am I going to do? It's more important for me to know that at the beginning of my turn, I always draw 3 cards and keep 1, than it is for me to know that cards are multi-use and that I can discard 3 cards to draw 1, right? That was a bad example, but you get what I mean, right? it is more concretely useful and interesting for me to build a scaffolding, a mind, whatever you want to call it, of this game by first knowing who I am, what I am, knowing what I have to work with, and then telling me how do I do what I know what I want to do, I know what I have to do it. Now tell me, how do I work with these things? All right, okay, the game's going to be 5 rounds. Each round, I'm going to have 3 actions. I'm going to pick one of them. Those actions are blippity bloppity bloop. And here's an interesting thing. I don't want to know what those actions are yet. I still want to know about the structure. I will often read a rule book and it says, okay, well, here's the structure. We're playing through 15 rounds. Each round has 3 turns and blippity blop. And then, eventually it'll say, here's the 10 actions you can choose from. And then inevitably, the rule book will start telling me the actions. I don't want to know that right now. I'm still thinking about the overall structure of how this game is going to play out. So I will always skip that part and go forward 4 pages until I get to the section of the rules that tells me, right, what happens at the end of the round? Because I'm still thinking about turn structure. All right, okay, and so at the end of the round, every card I haven't played yet is going to be discarded, and at the beginning of the next round, I'm going to have to draw 3 more, and cards that are on the board are this, that, and the other thing. Fine, great. Now, I understand the workings of this game, right? The same way I understand the workings of an internal combustion engine. I understand how fuel is sprayed into the chamber and, the spinning of the turbines compresses it and makes it explodes and pushes it back out. I understand how the thing works. And you know what I'm ready for now? Now I'm ready to learn, right, where am I going to drive this thing to? And that's what the rest of the rules are. That's when I start saying, okay, now that I understand all of this, you can start telling me that, well, yeah, here's how you harvest things. Here's how you convert things into other things. Here's how you engage in trade with other players. Here's how you, complete objectives. Here's how you jettison objectives and find new objectives. And whatever, all the different core little subset actions. Because those things go to the very, very top of the pyramid that I've been building, because I've made all these incredibly strong foundations that just layer on top of each other so that it becomes second nature. All right, of course, I understand why I do this thing, because I understand where I'm going. I know what's going to happen at the end of the round if I don't do this thing, and I get why that's important. And after reading the rules like I've just described it, I feel like I've already played the game. And the thing is, I do this all the time because I probably read 10 rule books a week on average, trying to decide whether I'm going to say yes. Publisher, please send me a copy of this game and I'll play it. 9 times out of 10, I say no, I'm not going to, because I understand what the game is and I'm like, no, we're not going to like that, or that's terrible, or whatever. Anyway, that's how I learn it. And it requires, unfortunately, pretty much hot wiring, hacking the manual, because the vast majority of rulebook manuals for board games do not understand human psychology. I say all this pointing out that my major in college, when I went to the University of Washington, was scientific and technical communication. That is what I was trained to do. To take Byzantine, complex engineer speak and programmer speak and transform it into something that regular humans can read. So I feel like I've got some skin in the game here. And I feel like that's the way a rulebook should be done, and the majority of them are not done that way, and they become a hurdle. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm describing how I learn games. I appreciate other people, the scaffolding doesn't hold up and they need to know what's at the top. That's such a foreign, alien concept to me that would be a better way for them to learn. But it's true. It's definitely there. And I think, unfortunately, that is fast becoming the standard. That, oh yeah, you're supposed to... there's nothing I hate more in a rule book than starting out with, here's a few key concepts you need to understand about the game. No, they are not. None of them are as key to me understanding the game as, I'm going to play over 10 rounds. Each round I get to do 3 actions. That's more key and crucial to understanding the game than knowing that every flip blorp can be converted into 15 dibdops. That's immaterial. That's trivia that you can tell me about after I know how many turns I'm going to take in the game. Rulebook manual writers out there. Anyway, so that's how I learn. And that's how I do it. I basically have to hack rule books because they're usually not done right. And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.